OG Bitcoiner Bruce Fenton is running for the Republican nomination for our New Hampshire seat in the U.S. Senate. The former executive director of the Bitcoin Foundation and founder of the Satoshi Roundtable, an exclusive gathering of crypto elite, will take on vulnerable incumbent Senator Maggie Hassan and is initially funding his campaign with $5 million of his own personal Bitcoin wealth. And here to talk all about it is Bruce Fenton, currently managing director, CEO, and founder of investment and financial services firm Chainstone Labs. Welcome, Bruce. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot for having me, Christine.
All right, just want to get off the gate. Want to take a look at Bitcoin first because you always have a great take on price analysis. So we've been seeing that Bitcoin has been climbing amid, UST purchases, or rather Luna purchases of Bitcoin for their Luna Foundation Guard's reserves. I wonder what your thoughts are on where we are in the market and your short-term outlook.
Short term's always hard. I mean, I like to look at the long term. I think that there's a big narrative that is going on in Bitcoin that started a couple of years ago with Michael Saylor and others, that this is real money and it's a real institutional asset class. And I think that that is what's driving Bitcoin, in the most important way, more than any other factors. You have now really, really serious institutions and family offices and very, very large pools of money who are buying this as an asset that they believe in for the long term. And I think that's the real big story on Bitcoin. It's money and it's here to stay.
Mm-hmm. Just taking a look at the Luna Foundation Guard, rather, they have been purchasing over $1 billion worth of Bitcoin into their treasury. I wonder, is this a net benefit for the Bitcoin community, or does it pose any risk to Bitcoin?
I don't think it poses risk to Bitcoin. It may pose risk to other parties, just like exchanges and anything else that's sort of second layer on top of Bitcoin. But Bitcoin itself is very, very secure. It has a very secure code base, and there's a lot of eyeballs, a lot of really serious people looking at that security to make sure that Bitcoin does what the code says it's going to do and what it's supposed to do. And I'm confident in that code. So I think Bitcoin's okay. And overall, the more activity, the better. The more buyers, the better. The more people holding, the better. Overall, it's all good for Bitcoin.
Speaking of the code, there is this Change the Code campaign brought on by Greenpeace, as well as the co-founder of Ripple, Chris Larsen, and climate change activists. I wonder what your take is on this whole campaign.
It's a bad idea, and it's sort of misleading or misunderstood by some of the people who are proponents of it. First of all, you can't just change the code. There's nobody that has the power to do that. If you got the people who are involved with creating the code, the core developers, if you got them to make a change, that doesn't mean that it changes Bitcoin. That just means that they changed something on a GitHub or something like that. The real Bitcoiners are not going to run something that changes the code. So you'd just end up with a fork of Bitcoin. The real Bitcoin is what it is, and the mechanism that it's issued by, this proof of work, which is ultimately burned energy, is an important part of the way that Bitcoin works and why it has value. And so that's not going to change. As far as the environmental impacts, there's a lot of things misunderstood about that as well. For example, the use of stranded energy. We now see volcanoes and oil flares and things like that are being used to mine Bitcoin, and that's actually great for the environment. So overall, it makes sense. Sure, I wish there was a way to do it like some of these proponents of the work, change the code. I wish there was a way to have that level of security without the work or without the burning of energy, but there just isn't. That's just a reality in the world. And compared to fiat, it's much more cleaner and much more, much less pollution.
Mm-hmm. I wonder about your thoughts on Chris Larsen's assertion that it would just take convincing about 50 Bitcoin miners to change the code.
I think he should know better since he's been in the space quite a while, but he has been working on his own kind of thing, so maybe he doesn't know better. But that's just not the case. That's not the case. I was right there during the block size wars, and there's now books and other things written about that. You just simply can't do that. It doesn't work like that. It works that way in a closed source project where you have people in an executive office building, maybe at Ripple, where they can decide things or change things. But Bitcoin is a true open source project. And ultimately, what is Bitcoin is what people decide to run on their own computers. So again, even if you could co-opt these people somehow, I mean, certainly you could get some people to. I mean, I could write the code right now. I could change the code, but it doesn't mean anybody's going to run it. And if you had very well-known core developers who did that same change, nobody's going to run it. It's just not. It's a non-starter. It's not a real proposal, and it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to our headline here. You're running for the U.S. Senate in New Hampshire. Why are you running for politics, and what is the platform you're running on?
Well, I'm running because I feel like our world is going through radical change right now, and our country is in trouble. And I feel like we need more people in public office, as much of a burden as it is. I'm not really that interested in public office, but we need more people there who understand the basic principles of human rights and freedom and liberty, and in the United States, our Constitution. So yeah, that's why I'm running, and my platform is exactly that. It's freedom, free markets, voluntary interaction, reducing the size of the state, and reducing state tyranny, especially the kind of tyranny we've seen over the last couple of years, which is tyranny related to all of these COVID policies, movement passes, mandated injections, terrible economic policies, terrible foreign policies, big statism and big government is showing its negatives over the last couple of years and over the last 20 years. And that's what I'm running against.
Speaking of which, I wonder what everyone in DC obviously has their eyes on Ukraine right now. I wonder what is your stance on foreign policy?
I think that the United States should protect our own interests, and the people in federal office and the people in the military take the oath that I took when I was in the military, which is to protect and defend the Constitution. And that's it. That's all we should do. There's absolutely nothing I see in any situation of what Russia or Ukraine is doing that is a threat to our Constitution. And if it's not a threat to our Constitution, it's simply not our business. If people want to support it individually, if they want to grab a gun and go over there, go ahead. But we cannot put our troops in danger and risk our troops' lives and the lives of Americans, and steal tax dollars from Americans to involve ourselves in a very complex conflict that's been going on quite some time. We should have learned our lesson when we did that in Afghanistan. We had exactly the same kind of narrative in Afghanistan. We've got to fight Russia and help these people who are freedom fighters who are fighting Russia. We had CIA experts go over there and train Taliban members how to make bombs, and we built them caves in the mountains and these kind of things. And it was a dismal failure that cost a lot of lives on both sides, a lot of American lives, and many hundreds of billions of dollars of American money. And I don't think we should be involved in these kind of things, and we should mind our own business. We have enough problems here at home that we need to focus on before we're trying to be policemen to the world.
And you're running as a Republican. I wonder what led to that decision versus running as an independent.
Well, I'm a libertarian, and I'm what you might call a Ron Paul Republican. To win in the United States, you really have to be one of the major two parties, particularly for something like United States Senate. It's almost nobody ever wins as an independent. It's extremely rare. And there is a really strong Republican party liberty contingent, starting with Ron Paul, and it continues today. There's people in federal office like Rand Paul and others. And here in New Hampshire, it's stronger probably than it is anywhere. We have the Free State Movement and a very strong liberty contingent in the GOP party here in New Hampshire. So it's sort of a natural fit. And I think that both parties, Republicans and Democrats, should be embracing this kind of thing. I know a lot of Democrats who aren't happy with what's going on in their party, and we need to, all Americans, Republicans and Democrats, we need to get together and embrace our core values, embrace the Constitution, human rights, and the things that we really stand for, or we're going to lose our country.
And you seem to have thrown your hat into the ring a little late. I mean, the primary is in September. So I wonder what led to this decision. Was it a last-minute decision? Was there something that kind of just pushed you over the edge and said you had to do this?
Yeah, it was a lot of things. I wasn't even considering it. This wasn't on my radar. Typically, you run for these things a couple of years ahead of time. I had a lot of friends at the Satoshi Roundtable back in January, February, who were trying to get me to run because there was a lot of publicity at the time that there just wasn't a strong, leader in the primary. We have a very strong opportunity in the general election. But unlike every other Senate race in the United States, this one is still up in the air. So the fact that it's late, it doesn't really matter. Right away, the moment that I announced, it became kind of an equal four-way race. So it's absolutely a winnable primary and absolutely a winnable general election. But I just felt that I had to do it as I looked at what was going on in the world, and I didn't see any of the candidates kind of speaking to the issues that I care about. And I'm looking at what is happening more broadly with the United States and the world. I just felt like I had to do it. If I didn't do it, I know I'd regret it the rest of my life. I've got to try.
Do you have a sense of what your chances are, or any polling done to understand, what the perspective is in New Hampshire is for candidates like yourself who are very pro-crypto?
The prospects are quite good. I mean, that's one reason that I jumped in, because it is a very, very winnable race. Typically in the primary, only 150,000 people or so vote. So in a four-way race, it could be as little as 50 to 70,000 votes that are needed to win that primary. And there's a lot of people who are predicting a red wave. Whoever wins that primary, if I win that primary, then there's just a lot of natural support from Republicans, and there's a lot of disenfranchised and upset Democrats who are not happy with Senator Hassan's performance at all. She's one of the most unpopular senators in the country, and her party has failed. The party has failed, and it's time to have a red wave. Even I would say, even for Democrats, I would make this case. You've got to mix it up a little bit. We cannot have our country go through what it's going through now. These have been dismal failure policies, and we've got to send that kind of message. So it's a very, very winnable race. I have excellent chances. Amazingly, it's unusual, especially this late. But anybody who looks at the numbers, you can look at the data in New Hampshire. It's clear I have an excellent chance of winning.
So Congress has been weighing a lot of digital asset related legislation. They've looked at, ransomware. They've talked about stable coins in the context of Biden's recent executive order. I wonder where your positioning is with regard to digital assets, cryptocurrencies, and how Congress looks at them.
Yeah, my position is really similar as it is to everything else. I happen to be personally, very invested, and I love cryptocurrency. I love Bitcoin, but that's sort of separate from my opinion on government, which is just that I'm across the board in favor of less regulations. I wouldn't be in favor of any new regulations about any cryptocurrencies, particularly about Bitcoin, which I feel is speech. It's ultimately code that's given away, and you can run and publish the code that you want. There's already existing rules about many other things like securities and illegal securities and fraud. And, we have plenty of rules in this country. In fact, we have too many. I'd probably be in favor of repealing some rules, but I'm not in favor of any new rules around this emerging space because it is so exciting. And I think it's going to be the backbone of the future global economy.
Mm-hmm. Would you support a digital dollar?
The dollar can do whatever it's want. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to have it. What I worry about greatly is all of the problems that are going to come with that, surveillance and tracking and these kind of things. Government has taken on this idea that it's somehow their birthright to know what people's financial business is. And that's a very new thing. When I became an investment advisor in the early 1990s, you could open an account without an ID. It's a relatively new idea that the government should know what you have and where it is and all of these kind of things. So there's a lot of big dangers, especially when you put it in the backdrop of the type of tyranny we've seen over the last couple of years. We don't want to be in a world where they can shut off your money because you posted misinformation or said something that was offensive, or you didn't have the right injection or something like that. We need to keep money free and open, but CBDCs can do whatever they want. Bitcoin is better money, and that's going to win the day eventually anyway.
On that note, The Verge came out with an article last year saying there was a sacking of a crypto mecca in New Hampshire. Libertarians had built a Bitcoin economy in a small New Hampshire town, but the feds tore it down. So does New Hampshire not have the greatest perspective on crypto, or that's just a federal level?
I wouldn't say the feds tore it down. I'm not really sure what they're referring to. I mean, there was some there were some people who had some ATM machines shut down because the feds claimed that they didn't have the proper paperwork. But overall, I mean, one reason we moved here is because it is a very solid, crypto and Bitcoin center. A lot of the people who found out about Bitcoin in our movement, even me, found out through these kind of, liberty-oriented events and the meetings that we have here. So I feel it's very strong. I have a lot of, neighbors and other people that are actively involved in this for sure.
And just curious, another crypto candidate we're seeing is Brock Pierce in Vermont. What do you see? What do you think about this trend of crypto candidates running for Congress?
I think it's great. I hope more people do it. I'm glad that I did. It was a very, very hard decision, but I'm so far I'm a week in. The sky hasn't fallen on me. It's something I'd recommend. I mean, we've got to do something for this country. You've got to.
All right.
We've got to. If you look at what's going on in the world, we've got to do something. We cannot let our country just fall apart. It's too important.